Hello friends, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Kat and I talk about books, writing, and I also take you along some travel bookish vlogs. Today we're doing something I can't believe I didn't think of doing earlier, which is the Authortube Newbie Tag. The first thing I did when I started my channel was to do the Booktube Newbie Tag, and it was an amazing way to introduce myself to the community, to launch my channel, and to start meeting people on YouTube. And I don't understand how I didn't even think of searching for a similar tag for writing. And this came about a few days ago when I was giving a tip to someone asking how they could find new and smaller Booktube channels, and I was telling them you should check out the Booktube Newbie Tag. That's a great way to find new and smaller channels. And that's when I thought maybe I should do that with writing. Maybe there is such a tag for writing, and indeed there is. There are actually two of them, and I've struggled a little bit to find the sources. For the Authortube Newbie Tag 2.0, this is created by Jenna Streety, whose channel and prompts I will link in the description below. For the first version, I couldn't find who created it. And because both were very cool but also had some overlap, I decided to mash them up together and come up with my own set of questions from those two. So without further ado, let's get started. I divided the questions in three main parts. One is roughly titled Past, the next one is Present, and then the third one is Authortube. The first question is, when did you start writing? Like most people on Authortube, I started very young writing and creating my own stories. From what I've seen from other people, a lot of them have kind of fallen out of it in later years and then recently came back to it. For me, it's slightly different. I kept writing until my early 20s, I think, and then I decided to try to make a living out of my writing. So I became a copywriter and I worked for publishing houses and companies for many years, but that also led me to kind of step away from fiction writing, which I missed very much. So I changed careers a few years ago. That gave me a break, and then I started writing again last year. So it's been a year and a half, roughly the same time I started YouTube. I started writing fiction and writing for myself again, and it's been really lovely. What was the first story you ever wrote? It was a very bad story of my dream of getting a horse. I think today you could call it a fan fiction of the Black Stallion almost, but it was just a character that looked very much like me, had the same age as me, and who ended up finding a horse and being able to keep the horse. So it was not very good. It was only a few pages long, but that's how I started writing. What authors have inspired you the most? I think what's tricky for me with this question is that I'm not really a reader or kind of writer. I'm not locking in onto one writer. I did that in the past, and then it turned out that I liked some of the books from this author and not all of them. And so in the same way that I tend to like some songs from an artist, but usually don't listen to the whole album, I'm a bit the same with books. I like to pick and choose and have a lot of diversity, so I might not be attached to some writer specifically, but books that have inspired me to write, I think, would be again the Black Stallion series. That's kind of what pushed me to start writing when I was a kid. And then the Harry Potter series and His Dark Materials are kind of the OGs of fantasy in my own reader journey, and kind of what sparked that desire to write speculative stories as well. Later on, I would say a book from Maëlys de Kerangal, who is a French author. It has two titles in English depending on the translation. It's either called The Heart or Men the Living, and She has a very unique way of writing, and I studied her writing during my creative writing masters, and it was so interesting. It was opening a lot of doors to me. I was suddenly realizing, wow, you can write like this, like you can do those kind of things, because I had a very classical education. Like I've studied the French classics, and so I was not really used to reading French contemporary literature. That really changed my perspective of what you can do with writing. So this book has been very influential on my writing as well. What do you usually write? What genres do you write in? Maybe backtracking a little bit, I do write in both French and English, but I will not necessarily write the same kind of things in those languages. I'm currently working on a fantasy novel that I'm writing in English, and I also have some projects that I'm toying with that are more general / contemporary fiction that I would be writing in French. Those are the main genres that I want to write in terms of fiction, but I also did write a lot in nonfiction, which I will probably cover in one of the later questions. What is your preferred writing tense, point of view, and category of story? In terms of writing sense, I don't really have a preference. My current project is written in the present tense because it's what feels most natural for this story, but other things I might write in the past. So I don't really have, again, like a strong stance on it. In terms of point of view though, I feel more comfortable with third person, and I kind of like to blend the close third person with omniscient third person, and it's kind of a little bit experimental in a way, but it's something that I quite enjoy. In terms of what I read, I do read both first and third person. I usually, again, prefer third person, but if the book is good, I will be as immersed with first person. I don't really mind that much. And then in terms of category of story, I'm not exactly sure what this was referring to. So again, I do like speculative fiction, and I do like kind of contemporary general fiction as well. Are you a plotter, pantser, or plantser? This is an interesting question because I think I've changed quite a bit, and it's not something that is fixed. First of all, I think pantser versus plotter is very much of a spectrum. So in a way, we're all plantsers because we are falling somewhere along that spectrum. But I used to be much more of a pantser, just going into writing and discovery write whatever came through my mind. It's hard for me to write good plots that way. I'm much more a character-driven kind of writer, and so I need to go a little bit more into some degree of plotting if I want to have a cohesive and engaging story. So I've been, again, sliding from one side to the other of that spectrum, and even within the same project, depending on where I'm at with that project, I will be plotting more or less. So it's a bit of a non-committal answer. I'm a bit of both, and it depends. What is your publishing path? Self-publish, traditional publish, hybrid, haven't decided yet, or just write for fun? I definitely want to be a professional writer. If I could be a full-time writer and not have to worry about financials, that would be awesome, but it's not the reality for a lot of writers. So I also want to be realistic in that front and come to terms with the fact that I might never be a full-time writer, but I definitely want to be a published professional writer. For me, the path is definitely traditional because I don't think I want to commit to doing everything myself. I want to rely on people who are experts in their field to do what they do best. So like the design cover, the editing, the marketing, definitely the marketing. And so I don't think like I'm the best placed person to do that myself. So I would very much want to have a team. And I really admire writers who decide to go the self-publishing route, because for me, it seems like such an incredible amount of time, and I have so much respect for them. But for me, I think it would be a lot of time figuring things out, a lot of stress. Again, I don't think I'm the best person to do everything, and it's also time taken away for writing for me. So I'd rather go traditional and focus on what I want to do, which is the writing part. In terms of my path so far, I've published little bits of fiction in French in small student journals, but as I said, I also worked in the publishing industry and as a copywriter, and so I've also traditionally published a couple of nonfiction books, which were both commissioned by publishing houses, which means that I had a contract to write those books. So I was paid, at least in part, before I wrote the book, and it was a whole process working with the publishing house on producing those books which they already wanted to publish. So one of those books was a kind of a typical travel guide about Stockholm, where I lived for a few years, and the other one is a cooking guide to plant-based cuisine, but it's a lot more than that. It's not just like a recipe book, it's a lot of tips and advice on how to transition your eating habits from traditional omnivorous diet to a plant-based diet. Those were super cool experiences, and I'm super proud of both of those books. So I would still be open to do those kind of works and work with publishing companies on commissioned nonfiction books. But for now, I'm focusing on my fiction writing. What's your biggest writing struggle? I think paradoxically at the moment, and since I started going back to my fiction writing, the main struggle has been things outside of writing. So I've talked about it on my channel already a little bit, but I had quite some severe burnout from work, and this year has also been quite difficult personally in terms of my mental health, physical health, personal life, all of that. So all of that obviously impacts my writing and makes it hard for me to have the mental space and the energy to write. So that's the main struggle. At the same time, writing is also helping me deal with those things. I'm happiest when I write regularly, and so when I don't, it's also usually a sign that some things are not going well. So it's a bit of that circle of things of just like life stuff making it hard to write, but also if I don't write, the life stuff gets harder. What's your best writing skill? I think I am a pretty good editor, which is not necessarily for myself, that's the hard part. It's really hard to edit your own work, but from doing a master's in creative writing and working with other authors and critiquing their work, I think I have a good eye to what works and what doesn't work in my friends' stories, and also in traditionally published books that I read. I will sometimes pick up on inconsistencies or things that don't make sense, and I get quite annoyed by them because I think a proper editor should have picked up on those. So I think I am quite a good editor. But then in terms of my own writing, as I mentioned, I'm very much a character-driven kind of writer, so I think having a sense of the internal life of my characters is something that comes rather naturally to me. Do you type on a computer, typewriter, write everything out by hand, or use a blend of those? And where do you write in general? I very much write on the computer because my hand can't go as fast as my brain, but I will do a lot of the editing on paper if I can. I do prefer that. I think it gives you some distance with your text and like a different view on it. So for the editing part, I do like to do that on paper. In terms of where I do write at my desk in my home office most of the time. And then I also try to go out to the library once a week to do some writing with a friend. And then when I'm traveling, if I can, I love visiting gorgeous libraries to write in beautiful environments. How did you find out about Authortube? So I've been watching YouTube for years. and fallen into the booktube niche somehow. That's how I started my channel, but from the beginning I knew I also wanted to talk about writing. So I think the first channel I discovered was Christian Jones' channel, which was at the time more about books and slowly moved more into being much more of a writer channel. But so I was aware of Authortube and at the same time hadn't completely clocked that it was also its own niche. I was always kind of blending Booktube and Authortube. So yeah, it kind of came up organically, and as I said, it was so in the back of my mind that I didn't even realize that there was this tag that I'm doing today. And yeah, I still can't wrap my head around how I did not think of doing this tag before. Anyway, what Authortube related videos can we expect to find on your channel? I think at the moment, most likely writing vlogs, and I already have some of those on my channel. I have a whole series of me doing the Write for Life challenge, which is not a companion, but kind of a follow-up to The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, which is a very famous program to help creatives with rekindling with their creativity. So the Write for Life program is exactly the same, but targeted specifically for writers. I did that last year, and so I have a whole playlist about it. And I also did the 1000 words of summer challenge. So that was kind of fun. So those are kind of the videos I already have on my channel, which are kind of doing those writing challenges / travel writing vlogs, along with some of reflections about writing as I go. If you've been on YouTube for a while, what's your best Authortube tip? So I've been on YouTube again for 1.5 years, but I wasn't necessarily as focused on writing as I would like. I feel like I haven't done some writing content in a while, and so I want to do more of those and get back to it. So I don't know if I have very much of a tip, but maybe one not necessarily specific to Authortube tip I can give from what I've seen, because I've been watching a lot of those Authortube Newbie Tags videos because I wanted to find new author friends and writer friends on YouTube. I've noticed that a lot of people are not including the prompts they are answering in the description and not necessarily crediting the tag creator. So I would say please remember to do that when you're doing a tag. First of all, it makes it much easier for people who want to do the same tag later, or if you're tagging some people, if they have the questions written, it's much easier for them to do that if you provide that for them in the description. And also, we want to give credit to the people who created those tags, so make sure to tag them if you know who did it. We don't always, because YouTube is a bit of a wild place, but if you know, please do credit the people. If you're new to Authortube, what is your biggest Authortube question? So I'm not really new, but also I'm kind of new. So what would be my question? I think my question is about how much you share about your projects on your channels. How much do you feel confident, especially if you intend to go the traditional route? At what point is it risky to divulge too much about your project? I know, for example, Christian Jones doesn't even share the title. She shares kind of very general things about the project. So I'm kind of curious about that and how to balance kind of protecting this project if you want it to be published, and also kind of sharing things and making it interesting for viewers. I think it's kind of a bit of a hard balance to find, so any tips and advice about this I would be very keen to get. What are you most looking forward to now that you're part of Authortube? I mean, I'm doing this for the same reason I started Booktube. I would love to make author friends, and since I started this channel, since I got back into writing, I did make several writer friends online, and I'm super excited and super grateful for them. But none of them is on YouTube, and I would like to make friends who share this as well, like who are writers but also do YouTube, because it's again quite a niche. There are some very specific things about it, and just having friends who understand what it's like to make videos and to talk about your projects and to be vulnerable online to that level, I think that would be really nice and helpful. So I would very much like to create that kind of community as well. All right, and the last question is, are you looking for any new channels to follow, beta readers, critic partners, or other types of writer buddies? If so, tell us who you're looking for and connect with them in the comments. I would definitely love to find beta readers and critic partners, but I think especially with critic partners, you really need to find someone that you trust, someone who reads, not necessarily write, but even that probably reads and writes in a similar genre to yours, so that they're able to critique it, but also someone who appreciates the kind of writing you're doing, someone who's you're appreciating the kind of writing they're doing. Like, you need to like each other's work, otherwise it's going to be really hard. And also someone who knows how to critique. I think is quite difficult, because sometimes as writers we might have a picture of what we would do if we were writing that project, but we are not, the other person is. And so we need to be able to keep that distance of just like, I'm not the writer of this book, I'm gonna let you figure things out, but I think this part isn't working for potentially this and this reason. Basically, you want to share how you're feeling and not how to solve the problems. That's the responsibility of the author you're critiquing. So finding people who have that understanding, who are happy to work in that way, who are respectful. It's really hard. Like, it's almost like dating, finding someone who you can work well in that realm. So I would definitely love to find that, because I find it quite difficult to find this level of trust and almost alchemy in your writing. And so yes, I'm really hoping to find that through this channel. And I'm conscious that it's likely to take time, and I would probably want to be friends with that person first, because again, you need to establish that trust and understand how you're working and how you function. All right, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit more about me as a writer, and hopefully you're also looking forward to more writing content on this channel. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.